So this is episode 8 of Harvesting Infinity, which is nominally about people who are creative outliers who harvest infinity in their lives. They don't feel that bounded, and they don't sort of let society convince them to stop being creative, even though they become grown-ups, which is unusual. So that's what this show is about. Today our guest is Ray Lustig, who is a musician, who used to be a scientist, so he's already a creative outlier. But the thing that's special about this guy is a lot of people who are really functioning at a high level artistically tend to kind of get carried away by their ego, and they invest all their energy in their artistic expression. He also invests a lot of energy in helping other people express themselves. So as a composition professor, spent many years at Juilliard, he was one of those people who applied a lot of his creativity to other people's lives, which is really unusual and wonderful. And it had a profound effect on me and a lot of other people I know. So because Ray has this unusual set of backgrounds, I get to ask him different questions than I could normally ask the other abnormal people on the show. So here's the question.
Okay.
So as a musician, composer, probably done some conducting, you've had a lot of different relationships with musical people. And to be a creator in today's world musically, you have to actually manage an increasing number of relationships, not just with performers and conductors and orchestras, but also with engineers and producers and filmmakers. So how do you manage all this stuff? Because these are people who are very different. They have different vocabularies. They have different priorities. They have different backgrounds. How do you manage this? Because you seem to be transcending a lot of different genres and boundaries.
Well, first of all, I want to just say thank you. Thank you for having me on Harvesting Infinity, Howard, my old friend. And your kind words mean so much to me, given that they're coming from someone like you, who also has a history of applying so much of your own creativity toward that of others and fostering a creative community. And I really admire that so much in you, and we share this together. So it's wonderful to see.
Thanks.
So thank you for having me here. It's really wonderful
Thank
to be
you.
here. Your question, it's a good question. I love that question. I think that has been, it's just been a great journey for me to just try to, crack open some of these little puzzles that are out there in the world when you have to work with different people, or when you get the opportunity to work with different people who have very different backgrounds. I think that, that's where you learn. I think that having come from a lifetime where I was like trying to go toward greater level of training in the classical symphonic music sphere for so long, which is really, really hard to get to that, and then to get through it, and then to make something of it. And then, in the last few years, I've really been moving in the direction of recording and production and performing and songwriting. And so this has been, a great adventure for me. So now we have this band Manicberg that we are really excited about. I am going to be welcoming the lead singer from Manicberg, who may bear a striking resemblance to myself in a little while. Yes, and so now we have. I'm in the world of a rock band, kind of an alt rock kind of band, post-punk, I guess you would describe it as. And I have a very, very cool set of collaborators who I speak a different language from all these people, and all of them themselves do. We're all trying to figure out how to communicate with each other. My main songwriting partner, Luigi Porto, an incredible songwriter, amazing musician. He and I, we kind of come from, we describe it as sort of opposing backgrounds, or at least that's the way he looks at it. He sees me as sort of the one from the conservatory training, who's now trying to learn the way around the rock and roll world, and he's coming from the streets of Italy, the underground of the dark new wave culture in Italy. Always performed all of his own music, never wrote music for other people to play, and then eventually found his way to New York, found his way to writing, to Juilliard, then found his way to writing for musicians who are not him, writing for other people, creating scores, writing an orchestra piece, writing an opera. So he sort of came at it from that direction, and I'm sort of going the other direction. It's not quite that simple. I did grow up in New York City. I grew up in, I went to high school in Greenwich Village. Both of my brothers were in punk rock bands, so I spent a lot of time, around the city, going to, interesting clubs in, downtown, really downtowny type of clubs and things. So I wasn't totally unfamiliar with that world, although I did seek, the sort of the rigor of Juilliard training. That was really what was very exciting to me. And then he later sought it himself, and so we meet in that area. And Luigi is, I've learned a tremendous amount from him. He's also a sound designer, so he's got a tremendous ear for audio. And then we work very, very intensely with our engineer Maximilian Hein. He's a brilliant, young, amazing engineer who comes out of NYU and that whole world of that super high level of audio production. Now works at the Hit Factory in New York City, which is one of the great studios of New York City, going way, way back. And so we've done a lot of the work there. And so getting to meet and work with all these people who just they not only speak a different language, but they do things that I can't do. I don't have the audio ear. I have an ear for counterpoint, harmony. I have an ear for, a lot of things about sound color. But both of my two partners, Luigi and Maximilian, both have an impeccable ear for audio that things I can't even hear side by side. I struggle to hear them. But it's great for me to learn. I love to sort of A/B things and sort of see how much I can stretch myself in that direction, because you have to keep trying to stretch yourself. But I love having collaborators. It's what I think it's what I've always craved, having more and deeper levels of involvement with.
So I have a question about this collaboration. In the classical world, a lot of these relationships start with a piece of paper, like a score, like with notes written on it.
Yeah.
And that's the exchange of, well, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
But in a lot of these other worlds, or these informal worlds, they're not so score-based.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it making that transition between the score being the definition of the piece of music, and then something else being the definition of the piece of music?
I mean, I think that was always an illusion, that the score is the piece of music, or it's always a delusion. I feel like that notion that the score is the music has always been kind of a fallacy. Like, if you really, I think that's the shortcoming for a lot of young composers like myself coming up, as sort of, I was like that, this is the piece. It's not really, like, it's only the blueprint. And there's so many other people who come into play, so many other interpretations of that come into play in going from, the piece of paper that you hand to the conductor, who then, finds, has the orchestra and all the musicians, and all these people are bringing to bear, their own decision, their own practice, their own habits, their own, desires for something. And there is a stamp. Maybe it's not as noticeable in that world, that personal stamp, because of the fact that they don't, in an orchestra setting, they don't choose different notes if they don't like the note you wrote. Like, they're supposed to stick with the note that you wrote. That's the blueprint. So we have to kind of hang with the blueprint. But they have a tremendous number of interpretive layers that we don't even know, we don't appreciate enough, I think. And sometimes they may be even subconscious to the players themselves. And that's what makes music really exciting. So that blueprint is, it's really only that. And I think making the transition from printed music for me wasn't to music that's sort of made in the open space and evolved and adapted. I would run for the pencil. Like, for first couple of years, I was running for the pencil to write it down, like to just get it onto paper, to notate it out for myself. And gradually I realized there's just not time. There's not time to run and write everything down and keep a carefully notated, record of all of the decisions you made. It's kind of, and then it became kind of better that there wasn't time for that. It became kind of better to let the music be in the air, let the music be in the memory, and let, errors be out in the open. If you play something a little bit differently than you played it last time, choose a different note, choose a different chord disposition or something like that, that might just be what you needed to do to evolve the piece of music, to deepen it, to grow more with it, to keep it alive in the open more. I really enjoyed that, and now I play. I feel like it's been great to be. And this is the way music has been made by so many rock bands, really, since I guess since rock started to become a thing in the mid 20th century, and the idea of writing everything down just became kind of a drag in that realm. So, but it's been fun for me. It's a great tool. Notation is an amazing tool. I'm so happy that I'm comfortable with it now, because it can be so useful when you're trying to work out something kind of intricate, or when it's something that is not easy to just sort of memorize and remember. But there's other tools. We have recording devices. These are used by a lot of people who don't use notation. It's because when you record something, you're getting a lot more sonically exact to it than you can get with notes on a piece of paper. So you're getting all of these levels of color and tempo, and you're getting not just the rhythm and where the notes when they were played, but how they were played relative to each other, articulation, how short was this note, how long was this note, how much did it punch out of the other notes. You played it on a recording, so you can get so much more precise with this tool. And there's a reason that people use that a lot more now than they use notation. Notation is extremely useful when you have to pass music on to other people who don't necessarily have the time to sit there and be told, like, this is how it goes. When you've got an orchestra of 50 people out there, you can't go tell everybody, this is how it goes, memorize that, this is how it goes. You can't go tell all of those people. And then they go off to another rehearsal where they play 6 or 7 other pieces of music, and then they're expected to come back to your rehearsal and remember how it goes. Well, no, it's on paper. And they'll make some notes, but at least they have the blueprint of how it's supposed to go. Anyway, long-winded.
So besides this, how do you capture the music in terms of notation versus a recording? There are a lot of other variables going on. There is all of this equipment and signal processing and velocity curves on keyboards. So there's a tremendous amount of technical information as well. And that's also hard to capture too. And there's also not enough time to write a lot of that down too. Yeah. So how do you deal with that? The acoustics of the room change what's going on. The people you're playing with.
That's the fun,
There's so many variables.
Yeah, at first it was terrifying, but it's really a part of the fun, I think. I think as if we can kind of let go enough to just enjoy the variables, and each new variable is a little puzzle that you can try to work out, and you probably won't work it out perfectly. If you get your band sounding amazingly in one room, then you move to a different room, or sometimes you have to get a different player. You need a different bassist. Your bassist is out of the country, so you got to get a different one. All of these little things happen, and you try to anticipate what those problems are going to be. You try to imagine how we're going to make it sound good when we need to go from here and then play the same music we've been playing, but now play it there. And that's really, I think it's really fun. And it doesn't always go well. And that's a part of the fun too, because you can learn from that. So
how much of a role does improvisation play in this?
Great point. I know you are a consummate improviser. You never play the same thing twice, and you're very conscious about that. I am a little bit less adventurous in that regard. I do like to work out the way the song goes. This is the way it goes. Let's kind of nail as much of it to the ground as possible, and then try to hone it and craft it and get it all out there in a very predictable way. And I really enjoy that. But like you said, there's other levels of improvisation. There's the improvisation of first of all, creating the music, that so much of our music comes about by improvisation in the first place. Probably all music comes about by some level of improvisation, when you're sitting there just trying to think about like what note comes next. Could be this one, or it could be this one. There, you've just improvised and trying to figure out like what came after note one. You've just made some level of improvisation, and then you've maybe committed to it. And you've decided, okay, that's now how the piece goes. So a musician like me, I tend to work in setting something, but as you're saying, there's improvisation is in the many other facets. Like, how are you going to interact with the people that you're working with? What might you decide is not working out, and what might you want to change in this rehearsal? What might, when something is starting to go wrong in live performance, how you're going to respond to that? And it will. There'll be plenty of things that go wrong in any live performance. So there's many possible layers of improvisation. How are you going to work in a recording studio with people? It's a new recording studio. How are you going to, talk to the engineer? How are you going to talk to the performers who you're trying to record, and to inspire them to give, to put their own stamp on what they're recording? Anyway.
So since I know Luigi as well, I actually met him in a composition class in your class.
That's right.
He seems to be a hard person to nail down, to tell him exactly what notes to play.
He is.
So he likes to improvise. So when you're the co-founders of a band, with one guy who's extremely comfortable with like how to write an orchestral piece, and you taught Luigi and I how to write this stuff, but left to his own devices, he will.
Yeah.
So what do you do about that?
It's cool. I mean, I at this point we have faith that I have faith. Like, I've known him we've been working together really intensely for years, and Luigi is an amazing musician. So when he's changing something, sometimes it's something we should be listening to. Like, if he's consistently playing this note here, it's like, maybe we should take that note seriously. It's not what we had intended. It's not what we've been practicing, but he's doing it now. So maybe there's something to that. Sometimes it was just a mistake, but sometimes there's something to it, and it's helping our song deepen and evolve.
So, not to sound too pseudo-philosophical, but there's this thing called the present moment, and when you're a musician, it's very much a real time in the present moment activity, and sometimes the people make up a program for what they're going to play 8 months out, in a place that they haven't been. By the time we get to the place, that program may or may not make sense. It seems like this ability to be flexible in these relationships and come up with different answers to questions in the moment seems like it's kind of necessary to be able to perform. Do you feel like it's more in the present moment than when you're like playing music that was written 200 years ago and you're trying to adhere to what everybody thinks the composer meant, even though we don't know for sure?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, I guess, like you're saying, we think we know what the composer meant. We think we know what this score is supposed to be telling us about what to play, and, it's a guess. It's just an educated guess, and we do our best to educate ourselves as well as possible, but it is an educated guess. And I agree with you that, it's the being, in the moment is really... that's when music is really happening, and overcoming self-consciousness is really important. So getting that noise out of your head that's telling you, that's especially the comparative voice. Like, am I really doing this? Am I doing this the right way? Am I as good as this other person who's doing a similar thing? Like, getting that noise out of your head is really important and really hard. I still struggle with it. I'm sure a lot of musicians do too. It's just really hard to get to that unself-conscious, playful moment where you're just having fun. Especially for me, because I don't, as a member of the band, I feel like my other bandmates, in particular Luigi, have a lot more, live performance experience than me. I came to live performing, later and lesser than they did, I think, and doing a ton of it now. But that, so it's a practice. It's it's a mind game. It's a meditative practice that you have to get into.
So you've been around for long enough that a lot of things have changed in the music world.
Yeah.
The technology's changed, the business models have changed, the music has changed. There's a lot of change. So not only do you have a lot of different kinds of relationships than an academic, classically oriented player, but you're also actually living in a different world than when you started. Yeah. Any of these particular things come to mind as like harder to deal with or welcome changes? Because it seems to me like it might be harder to make it in music today than it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm certainly no sage in that front. I don't really know. It's different. It's different. But, change has always been happening, and there's nothing new about, what is it? The saying is about, I can't remember the saying about the only thing you can count on is change or something like that. So, yeah, so, as radical as some of the changes that we're seeing now are, AI, as huge as that is, I think we just have to tell ourselves that, like, this is just another very elaborate tool. I mean, it must have freaked people out when recording became a thing. It must have really been like, well, that's it. No more, we'll never need anybody to play a violin. Just the person who records it will just listen on a radio. Like, that must have really freaked people out that was just going to, change everything and just upturn everything, ruin a lot of livelihoods, and probably does ruin some livelihoods. But, I think that all we can do, we're artists, we're not going to stop. Like, this is what we want to do, right? This is what we're compelled to do. This is, for a lot of us, this is all we can do. So we have to keep trying. And, I think when that's the case, we just have to look at these things as it's a tool. It's the next tool. I don't think, there's certain kinds of music with AI that are going to be music making, and certain types of careers in music making that are going to probably go away, diminish in importance, diminish in commonness. But I think that, hopefully for a lot of those musicians, if they're really determined, if they really need to, they'll find a way to be on the other end of it, to be on the end where they're looking at these tools as something that they can employ, or they can find a way around that world entirely. There's realms of music that I don't think are going to be taken over by AI anytime soon, because nobody wants them to be. People want to see that live performer up on stage. They don't want a robot up there. They want that live performer.
Okay. AI comes up a lot in this program in prior episodes.
Yeah.
And I've run into some musicians who are terrified that they're going to be replaced by AI. I don't think musicians are going to be replaced by AI. But do you ever run into any people who think that AI is like a great thing for a musician, that it's a wonderful thing? It seems to be more people are upset about it than excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
In music.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been lucky to be, around musicians who have been having a lot of fun experimenting with it. I think I showed you that piece by Jakub Czupinski, one of my favorite composers and a good friend, who he put it together a very tongue-in-cheek piece for our monthly meetup. So we had in the studio that was just like, it was stunning. He said, though, it was about a 9-minute piece of music. It was like 5 songs sort of strung together in this one bizarre and really intense melody and medley. And it was really fascinating and pretty scary how good the music was that was being made totally by robot. However, what he said was that he used these prompts to create a lot of music, and it created about 100 compositions, 100 songs, and he went through 100 songs to sort of choose the 5 that he liked. So I think there's the curatorial aspect. Like, at some point, people like to think that there is somebody behind something. I think of that music that he made, those 9 minutes of music, as Jakub Czupinski's music. Like, he curated that. He didn't sit there and put all those notes on paper and hand them to a gospel choir and a big band. But he curated that. He was able to make a much bigger sound than musicians of yesteryear would have been able to make in such a short time with such short resources. But so is rock and roll, So is what the Beatles were able to do in the studio. They were able to make a much bigger sound than 4 people could ever, make just live standing there on a stage. And that was, we just kind of accepted that at that point. You can use these tools to do something that has a sound that formerly you needed, hundreds of people for. Look at film scoring now. It usually involves somebody sitting at a computer screen and even at a laptop, to make a symphonic orchestra sound that would have involved hundreds of people and huge resources just, 50 or 100 years ago. So it's just, I think it's a tool, and I think like a lot of musicians are trying to stay excited about, here's the latest new tool. It blows away so many things. There were so many things that, all kinds of audio software that you may have formerly felt, I've got to get on it. I've got to teach myself to use that software. I've got to get good at this. I've got to get good at that. Maybe now things are different. Maybe now there's a lot of things I don't really need to get good at anymore because AI can just do a lot of that for me. So a lot of the busy work of yesteryear may go away as well. But yes, livelihoods is probably the thing that'll change really quickly. That stuff is a little slower to evolve. So that stuff, I think, is what's changing.
So a tiny digression about AI. I spent 25 years in Silicon Valley, and I worked at Apple Computer, and I still have a lot of friends who are techies, and I was a techie. It's been called to my attention recently that the act of prompting in AI is kind of like an act of programming, except programming with words instead of like typing out code, and that depending on who's prompting which AI, you get very, very, very different results. And this curating business, I've been writing a column for about a year, and I create artwork using AIs. And at the beginning, I would have to make about 40 requests to get an image that I thought was usable. And over the course of doing this for almost a year, I can get good images a lot faster now.
Yeah, you're developing a skill in interfacing.
I'm not only learning how to prompt it, but the AIs are getting smarter.
Yeah.
So the AI is much smarter than it was when I started doing this. And sometimes I get an image in the first try. So
like,
I don't.
Good enough.
I don't feel like it's cheating. I don't feel like the AI is doing this because I learned how to prompt very differently. I used to ask it a sentence, can you draw me a such and such? But now I may give it 500 words and say, and give me an image that is consistent with what I'm expressing here in these words. And by the way, as an example, consider this. And it produces so much higher quality results. So AI seems to be working for image generation because I'm not an artist. I could never create this art. It also seems to be helping writers a lot in editing, proofreading, spelling, Grammarly. But I don't know of too many musicians who are feeling like it did as much for them as it did for the image generation and for the writing. And I haven't been able to personally figure out how to use AI to help me musically. The things I need help in musically, I seem to have to do it myself. So it's, but the insight that a prompt is a program, and that you are a programmer. If you're talking to an AI, you are actually programming.
It used to be really hard to program, and now it's not as hard, not nearly as hard, right? You can do it with prompts. It used to be, so it's just one of the ways, and something that used to be really, really hard, required, a lifetime of learning, a lot of special skills, is becoming easier.
And it's hard to draw a line between what is AI anyway. I have a lot of friends who do orchestration.
Yeah.
And to try to create the parts for an 80-piece orchestra without using a computer, it's prohibitive. There is no longer the time or the budget to do that. You have to use a computer. And there are people who have 10 to 100,000 scores in a computer. And many of them have used a program called Finale. And Finale just ended.
It's going,
And I know composers who are freaking out that I have 100,000 scores in Finale. Like, what do I do? So the tech is like, it's double-edged. There's some things you can't do without it. And there's some things that you can't do with it. And just like everything else in the world is changing, politically, economically, business, AI is just one of those things. And to be a creative person, you just have to be flexible and be willing to improvise. And
absolutely.
So I think we've covered enough of the waterfront on this. I don't know if you want to get your alter ego out and do some performing.
I'll see if I can find him. Yeah.
But the second half of this is we're going to have some live music with another person who resembles this person. So we're going to take a break now and get reset and start the next segment. Okay, so Harvesting Infinity's tried an experiment. Ray had to go, but he sent in a representative from a different point in time of his band called Manicberg. And take it away and explain who you are and what you're doing.
Howard, thank you. Thank you for having me here. It is so good to be in your presence again, old friend. It's so good to breathe the pristine air of the Berkshire Mountains, the beautiful hills of western Massachusetts beckon me year-round. And to be here now amongst the resplendent colors of autumn is a gift from whence no one truly knows. Where I come from is very different, New York City. And as I tread the filthy streets of my beloved hometown, I'm often compelled to reflect upon our ubiquitous urban neighbor, Ratus norvegicus, the common rat. A creature oft maligned and seldom admired, yet in the grand tapestry of nature's design there is no inherent superiority in our own lofty station. With naught but the twist of fortune's fickle hand, we too might be cast into the depths of subsistence, scrambling among our resilient fellow mammals. Thus, let us marvel at the tenacity, for in the looking glass of destiny's caprice, we find reflected our own precarious plight. Your balloon will be arriving very soon, and beginning its descent at high noon. It's here to take you up to meet the moon. So don't forget your ticket and your fancy coat. Untethered and as buoyant as a feather, and we haven't got a plan for where or whether we will ever land. Ladies and gentlemen of discerning minds and insatiable curiosity for natural marvels, I bring you news tonight. I, Professor Raymond Joseph Lustig III, Doctor Artium Musicarum, wish to present to you a lecture this evening. News tonight of the recent discovery of a novel species, Arenae vitrum coloratum, the colored glass dancing spider. Conjure in your minds a creature of ethereal opulence, a bewitching arachnid whose very presence illuminates the imagination in ways heretofore unseen. This spectre of elegance captivates not merely through her resplendent attire, but through the sorcery of her art, luring her unsuspecting prey into a labyrinth of mesmerizing illusion. The color glass dancing spider will relieve you of your memories. Wandering into her silken pavilion, strumming her melody to summon her lasting remedy, newly renovated once again, in the hope that you will come and stay for a long, long while. It all began so long ago. It all began so very long ago. Why can't you resist the gravity? Why can't you resist the gravity? Such an intricate crochet with the delicate ballet until the real show begins. A thickening plot with a sickening finale, and the same one always wins. The curtain call is brief. She unceremoniously resets her awful stage. It all began so long ago. It all began so very long ago. Why can't you deny your history? Why can't you defy your destiny? Oh, you're trading it all for the numbness, and it's such a relief. But when you wake to the price of her slumber, you're in disbelief. Oh, she's a thief, a deal so rotten, but then she's back for more, and you've completely forgotten once again. The colored glass dancing spider will relieve you only when you surrendered completely and practiced your song over and over again until you sing it so sweetly that no one can resist. And then you take your own corner where you'll quietly await the fate of your own next meal. It all began so long ago. It all began so very long ago. It all began such a long, long time ago. Go, 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 As Howard said, I am here this evening as a representative of Manicburg. We are a band. I and my colleagues, we play out as a group, as an ensemble, if I may. And this afternoon, I'm here as a solo representative, playing a couple of our songs, The Colored Glass Dancing Spider. My esteemed colleague, Mr. Luigi Porto, is my primary songwriting partner, a man of extraordinary ability, incredible resourcefulness. I admire him tremendously, and I oftentimes think that this song that I wrote 2 years before working with Mr. Porto actually was a premonition of my coming to work with him. This song reflects his nature very directly. It is called Here's Your Man. Here's your man, the right man
for the job. You'd better go and hire him instead of that other slob. Yes, he is your man, the only man for this important job. So go ahead and hire him instead of that worthless, slobbering buffoon. It couldn't be too soon. When his resume unrolls, you're gonna be bowled over like the last pin standing at the end of the lane. Let me explain, he's the best of the best, and he'd have to confess to being totally obsessed, head and shoulders and boulders above the rest. When the competition's thick as could be, you're gonna see that he is more than ready. Watch what he could do and learn a thing or two. Hire this man, he's the man for the job. You'd better snap him up, now he's got his hand on the knob and could walk out your door forevermore. You've never seen anything like him before. He's bold under pressure, doesn't fold under duress, and just as you guessed, he doesn't need any rest. He is impeccably dressed, and everyone is so impressed at how he handles such incredible stress with pure finesse. I'm told he wears a coat of diamonds all the time, in every climate, even though he's never ever cold. He's something to behold. He's sweating silver bullets and he's shitting bricks of gold. I'm sure you're sold, 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 sold on board this man today, this instant. Don't delay. This job is far too important to entrust to those other chattering baboons. And soon you're gonna see new booming markets found. Your profits abound, your interests compound. You're gonna lift off the ground. You'll be the talk of the town, internationally renowned.
Thank you. We do hope you'll come out and see us sometime. We hope to be in your area before too long. I hope you'll come see. Again, our name is Manicburg. It's a small imaginary city, and we hope you'll join us there. Tremendous gratitude toward Howard for having me on this beautiful show, and I hope to be back again soon.
So that was a nice little time machine experience. And Manicburg has come into being. Exactly how? And which century are we in here?
Manicburg came to be crawling out of the Conservatory of Juilliard. I was fortunate enough to have as one of my students in a class Luigi Porto, who is now my other half in the band. Luigi was a student in my class, and as he likes to put it, I kicked him out after one semester. It wasn't that at all. I promoted him after one semester because he was clearly overqualified for the cohort that he was in that year. So he was promoted to the next class along. Conrad Cummings, wonderful, more advanced level class that I was not teaching. So then we connected years later. And we were, and we recognized that we were both becoming more interested in songwriting. And it was coming out of a place of having done a large theater work, Semmelweis, where it was a full-scale theater work, and in order to workshop this work and then to eventually to showcase it for potential producers, we had to mount our own showcase out of pocket. And so in an attempt to save money, I was like, well, there's only one male role in this show that I can actually just do. So I just did the male role myself. And it got me interested in singing and performing. And from there, Luigi and I began doing some songwriting together. I came in with a bunch of songs, and he came in with a bunch of songs. And then there was our whole studio night scene that Howard has very much been at the core of for a long time. And it came together with a bunch of people who came from that world. And and we decided we wanted to make it as an album, so we worked on it as a studio album, and which is now coming out. It's coming out next week. Oh my God, it snuck up on us. It's finally coming out next week. Our completed first album, it's a self-titled album called Manic-Berg, and it came to include a number of people around the world. A lot of people recorded onto this album for us. People came in. Our Costa Rican drummer flew in several times, and an Italian drummer visited us and recorded with us, and our bass player for our live band is from Mexico. We've also had many artists in Germany and in Poland involved. So it's been it's been a wonderful experience putting this all together with musicians from around the world. And then, of course, we've played a number of these songs in our little intimate salon setting at studio nights. That's been incredibly encouraging for us, and a great little laboratory for us to try some of these songs out.
And a concert 2 weeks ago.
Concert 2 weeks ago, yes, and there'll be more. We have more coming up. We hope to get up to your neck of the woods soon, if we can find a way. So.
Are you releasing singles also, or just?
Yes, we've released already 3 singles are out. So one of those songs, the Colored Glass, the Silken Pavilion, the one that begins with Colored Glass Dancing Spider, that one is out as a single, and another one called One for You is out as a single, and another one called Monkey World. There seems to be this naturalist theme to a lot of our work. So those 3 singles are out. We have videos for those as well. And there's a 4th one, the Music Box song. We have a little video for that one, too, because it's just such a short song. So we made a little video for it.
Could you tell us a little bit about this Music Box? I believe you made it.
These are toys that I found amusing many, many years ago. I thought it was a very cool idea, and I started playing around with it. And I ended up using it in a number of different contexts, different types of pieces. As you mentioned, I once, a chamber music piece, I decided that the chamber music piece needed to have a whole group of these boxes sort of stationed all around the little performance hall. So I came in with a gigantic crate of them and handed a box to each person like this, and people went all around this space, and then the piece of music ends with all of these little music boxes tinkering away and creating this shower of tiny little Tinkerbell notes all around the space. And then I used it again later in a theater work, Semmelweis, in which it was sort of representative of, became symbolic of sort of motherhood and parenthood. There was a lot of music box in that. And then just because it was sitting there on the shelf gathering dust, I dusted it off and used it for one of our Manic-Berg songs, Your Balloon.
Could you just briefly say what Semmelweis was? Because that's a pretty amazing thing, too.
Oh, thank you for asking. Thank you. This was it's hard to be brief, but Semmelweis was it's a work that was inspired by the life of a physician from the mid 1800s, who was the obstetrician who was beginning to recognize that on his ward, the many, many horrific deaths of the women dying of childbed fever seemed to be coming together to him as a pattern, and he was recognizing what that pattern was. And the tragedy of the pattern that he was seeing was that the reason these women were dying in droves, up to 30% in his ward, and in the wards of other important doctors in major hospitals, was because the physicians were not washing their hands. That was not a practice of the time, and it was not recognized for its importance at the time. And then it was up to this Hungarian physician, Ignaz Semmelweis, who made this discovery, to try to compel the Viennese upper-class medical establishment of the time of his hypothesis. And of course, news like this would fall very badly on anyone's ears, that there was culpability of the physicians themselves in their own patients' deaths, that he had worked, he and all of the other physicians had worked tirelessly throughout their careers, sacrificed so much of themselves for the good of their patients, only to realize that the patients were dying because of something that was on their own hands. So it was a very, very bitter pill to swallow. And I've always found that story fascinating because it plays to this notion of a black hole, something that we can't see at all, and until once we finally see it, we can't unsee it. Denial is a big factor. So I wrote a stage-length work that was inspired on this with my collaborator Matthew Doherty, and it was produced in Hungary in 2018 and 2019.
So the reason I wanted to ask Professor Lustig about Semmelweis, it's on the path to Manickberg, because before that he was playing more traditional, composing more orchestral work, string quartet things, and this was a performance. Semmelweis got him into sort of musical theater, and the musical theater has evolved into Manickberg. So it's been part of the Manickberg story, moving from traditional music into performance theatrical work. And I think that's where it is now. So it's another example of harvesting infinity. This guy has been harvesting infinity all over the place.
At the inspiration of this gentleman over here.
And so that's the end of episode 8.